Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is a podcast where sports and business collide. I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we'll skip the fluff and get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we dive into the wins, the lessons, and some of those failures that make our legacies worth living. In today's episode, we welcome Gregg Hemphill, CEO of NextBelt LLC. Gregg, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, you've had some really cool jobs over the years. Tell me
Yes.
which one's your favorite.
Oh man, that's a good one. Shoot. It's like asking your favorite kid, maybe. Maybe Oakley was my favorite. Maybe Oakley.
Okay.
Other than this, my current one might be my favorite, but prior jobs are probably Oakley.
Yeah. Why is that? What made Oakley such a thriving experience for you?
Well, Oakley, I was head of men's apparel, and there was 5 categories for that. It was surf, snow, golf, training, and lifestyle. So I basically built my closet out. I mean, I was building product for my, 4 favorite sports to do: work out, surf, ski, play golf.
Yeah.
So, and I had an incredible boss there that I learned a ton from. So I think the combination of, I grew a ton business wise.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love apparel, and being able to sort of make product for your favorite things was an incredible combination.
Yeah, and I think that as we look back over the years and the roles we play, I think those leaders and those bosses that we have along the way can really shape those experiences for us. Tell me, for maybe specifically that person, maybe somebody else, what was that number one lesson you picked up over the years that you still apply today?
Really, I think the most important thing is accountability.
Okay.
And I think and to go with accountability, it's not just so much accountable for, your specific role. I had one boss, it was great. He said, not only are you responsible for your job, but you need to make sure what's happening before you is happening as it should and on time, and what happens after you is happening as it should and on time. So I think it's really taking accountability for the entire process, not just your piece. Because if what happens before you or even after you doesn't go as planned, I mean, a lot of stuff doesn't go as planned, but people aren't, doing what they should in that, then it really screws up the whole thing. So I would say the number one trait for successful people is accountability of the entire process.
Yeah, and I like that because it gets you out of that box of the things that I control are the only things I worry about in the company. Right now, we're thinking about that entire process. We're thinking about the others that are part of this, our suppliers and our in-house suppliers, right? Who's upstream from me, or our customers who may not be the end customer; they're just who happens to be downstream from me.
No
and
question.
You start to take that entire thing into account. It's an exercise that we used quite a bit in the Six Sigma world. SIPOC, supplier inputs, process outputs, and customers. Didn't matter who the supplier or customer was. Somebody's upstream of you, somebody's downstream of you. Take it all into consideration.
Yeah. That was probably one of the most important lessons I ever learned.
That's awesome. I love it. So when you mentioned Oakley, you said, other than what you're doing right now, give us an idea of what it is you've got in the works right now.
Well, I'm CEO of NextBelt, and it's different than sort of my other roles from the standpoint of now it's not just before it was you sort of I had product categories I managed, or an entire sort of business unit. But as a CEO, there's a lot more to pay attention to on a daily basis, whether it's the finance team or customer service or manufacturing or the warehouse or supply chain. It's been a learning experience to just know how to manage my time and make sure that I'm sort of keeping my eye on everything at once. And I can't do like my sort of tendency is just dive in and go fix it.
Gotcha.
Or, where before is if you're just kind of managing a section of the business, you could sort of outwork the problem. Um, if I do that, if I try just to outwork a problem in a single area, then the others fall apart. So um, managing that has been probably the biggest learning curve for me, and the sort of day-to-day challenge, because there's always something going on somewhere, and trying to just make sure I'm getting done what I need to get done, and then go help out where there's the need.
So tell me a little bit about that, because that's one of the interesting things that many entrepreneurs and even those that are brought into these companies as CEO or executives of these small companies, something they're not used to when they come from larger organizations is wearing all of these hats. Right?
Yeah.
So when you wake up in the morning, how do you determine which one's going on first?
Well, I start my day. It's in the, this isn't any sort of earth shattering um, trait or tact. Uh, I kind of pick the three things that I have to get done for the day. Like
Yep.
what do I have to get done? And it may not necessarily be something that's just specific to my role, but three things that are critical for me to get done for the day. And then I sort of go through that priority list of what else is going on, and inevitably, there's things that take away time that you weren't planning on, right?
Right.
So I do if I do have specific stuff that has to get done, I will block out time and shut my door and dig into it. Otherwise, you can get distracted and the day's gone by and you haven't gotten anything you need to get done. Whether it be for your board or investors or whoever it is.
Yeah.
So it's easy to lose the track of the day pretty fast.
Yeah, I think that, you said, it's nothing all that innovative or unusual, but I think people lose sight of the simple things, right? Of,
Yeah,
just let me start with the most important things. What are my big rocks for the day? What are my big rocks for the week that I need to knock out?
yeah,
Because I think what happens is, and I've had a lot of these discussions lately, maybe it's just that time of year, but whether they're clients or prospects or people that I just run into in networking sessions, they're all getting to the end of the day and they don't know what they did all day. Right? I
yeah.
spent 10 hours in my business and I don't know what the hell I did. Right. And it's because they didn't plan. They didn't have anything structured in that day. And they let the emails, they let the texts, they let the urgent things control their time.
It
And
and it's super easy to do, I think,
oh,
because you
yeah.
feel like, you know, you just clicked off a bunch of emails. You feel like you're accomplishing stuff, but you're really not. I mean, you're just kind
Yep.
of, um, they say your inbox is somebody else's to-do list for you,
Hmm.
not what's most important for you. So, um, yeah, if I can get those three big things done every day, I feel like I've had a pretty accomplished, week. I'm not sure I've ever gone a full week where I've gotten all three things done the day I said I was going to get them done, but I do try to, by the end of the week, make sure I get all three things done. And it's kind of the last thing I check before I leave every day is, did I get those three things done? And sometimes it's like, no. So it's a great reminder really for me, because it's
Yep.
super easy to, like you say, lose sight. And then I can go back, oh, you know what? I need to get this done. And I'm going to do this before I get out of here.
Yeah, I think it's great, especially if you check that at 3:30, something like that,
Yeah.
before you get to the end of the day, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times we wait till the end of the day to do that post mortem, and then say, well, I can't do anything about it now, so I guess I'll just push it to tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if you have that afternoon check in, you at least can get something done.
Yeah,
So,
for
out
sure.
of curiosity, are you a dessert guy or a vegetables guy? Which one of those do you go after first when it comes to your three things? The
Oh my
easy or
God.
the tougher one?
For sure the tougher one, because I know myself.
Yeah.
I got to get the tougher one done, because by the end of the day, and I don't, you know, maybe it's just because you're worn out mentally or whatever. I seem to get easier distracted, so I try to knock out that hard one first,
Yeah.
um, and then the others. I try to keep that easy, sort of just routine task stuff towards the end of the day, when I don't have to really think as much, and you have at least for me, I'm a morning person
Hmm.
in general. So I'm more effective in the morning.
Yeah. Have you read Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big guy on eating the frog, right? For those that don't know it, Brian Tracy, shout out to Brian Tracy. Eat that frog. Basically, the idea is if you knew every day you had to eat a frog, it'd be the worst thing you had to do all day long. And so you might as well get it out of the way and do it and then get on with the rest of your day. Same thing goes with work tasks, right? If you can get that one thing out of the way that's the sitting at the forefront of your mind that's just bugging you that you know you need to do, get it done and move on with your day.
For sure, and whether it's just a hard task or a hard conversation, because it just it's you have to do it. It's in the back of
Yep.
your mind, so it just bugs you. So I might as well get it done with, so it stops bugging me more
Yeah.
than anything. It's probably more selfish, just so I stop bugging myself.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that people don't forget that you kind of touched on there was a lot of times if we think well in the morning and we're on, we have our coffee or we get, we just wake up in a good mood, whatever, and we do a better job of thinking in the morning,
Yeah,
don't be doing your emails in the morning, right? Don't
no,
waste the time in the morning, your best thinking time, trying to catch up on other people's priorities. Use that for what you do, what you want to accomplish in your area, what you want to accomplish in your roles, and then leave the afternoon for all the other non-emergent stuff.
yeah, and I've started blocking my calendar off till
Yep.
10 o'clock in the morning, just because people are going to put meetings on if it's open, and then I can for me personally, I feel like if I start the day with momentum, then I typically have a pretty good day. But if I start the day just sort of chasing my tail, that those are the days that are unproductive for me. So
Mhm.
I really have to, maybe it's because I'm ADD or something. I don't know, but I feel like I have to get that momentum going, and then I'm pretty good.
No, I think that's great. So if we look at your career, you've had a couple very large companies,
Mhm.
and a couple small ones. Give me the contrast, other than wearing many hats. I mean, that's going to be a given. Sometimes you get that in the big companies too, but it's certainly in the smaller companies you do. But other than that, give me an idea about the philosophy of working in an executive role in a large organization versus running a small one. What do you see as the big differences?
Um, to me, I like to do a lot of stuff. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I've always been sort of very hands-on in my role.
Hmm.
So I actually prefer the smaller one. A lot of people like a bigger company because they have a lot of people helping them do stuff. That's not me. I'll typically take on, stuff that I could have other people do. Um, I think the biggest difference between a big company and a small company is, especially a company of our size, is that if you kind of decide on a plan or decide to do something, you can move on it quick and you can action on it quick, and you don't have to have the pre-meeting for the meeting and then have the post-meeting to talk about the meeting and then make a decision that kind of ultimately feels like it's watered down because you had too many people that you know wanted to feel like they had a voice.
Yep.
Um, Here we get in a room and we figure it out, and when we leave the room, typically we leave the room with the plan of action and go attack it. And look, I'd rather go for it fast and figure out it was the wrong decision quickly, as opposed to sort of wait around. I don't, your great ideas don't get better or worse over time, so you might as well just
Yeah.
attack it and see if it was a good idea or a bad idea quick.
Now, do you feel like you miss out on the extra minds in working with issues, right? In other words, the big companies, you do get more people in a room. It is more of a hassle, but you have more input, more different points of view, etc. Do you feel like you miss that at all in the small room, or is it nice just to have the two pizza size team, right? The ones that that 8, 10 people in a room and they get deeper into the issues.
Um, I think on a big company, you might have more resources to gather information.
Hmm.
You might get a deeper information set to start with your decision. Um, but ultimately, I think when you get too many people in a room, it just gets watered down.
Yep.
And I think at a lot of big companies, a lot of people want to hear their voices heard. So um, there's a lot of it just doesn't seem like it ends up being as good, because you're trying to appease some people. So it gets watered down a little bit. I think here we still have the right people in the room, the people who are knowledgeable on the subject, the people who are in it every day to help us make those decisions. So I prefer it on the smaller side.
Okay.
And you can also pivot a lot quicker.
Yep.
If you learn some new information, you can pivot really quick.
Yep. No, and I agree with you. I've worked with the mega companies, the Pfizers of the world, and that kind of stuff. And it's the tough part about that is a lot of times when you're sitting in that room, because of the size of the company, you only have a certain portion of the story, right? You've got
Right.
part of the information to go with, right? Whereas when you've got a smaller company, you've got a number of people in the room that all have the entire story or all have different perspectives on most of the story, and you can fill in the gaps much easier for them.
I
So
also
there
think
is that
there's
advantage.
less. I think there's less agendas in a smaller company. Everybody's
That's
sort
possible
of
too.
got, hey, it's pretty clear and simple what our agendas are, and not that they're good or bad agendas in the bigger companies, but when you get that big, there's just so many different things that need to be satisfied. It's harder.
Yeah. Well, and the advantage of the small company is a lot more times you can help to manage the culture,
Yes.
and control some of those agendas. Tell me how that works for a CEO, right? A lot of times the people say that culture comes from the C-suite. As the CEO of a small company, how do you manage your culture?
It's I'll be honest, it's the hardest part, because we've got really talented people, and everybody's got a different personality, a different way that they communicate. They like to be communicated with, how they act and react. So, um, I think my general rule is no asshole rule.
Hmm?
I don't know if I can say this here on the podcast, but
Feel free.
that's my general rule.
Yeah.
Look, I even had this conversation today. Look, we have 60 plus employees here. There's no way all 60 people are going to be friends. There are people here that you work with that you just, for whatever reason, probably don't see eye to eye with.
Hmm.
And that's okay. You still have to treat those people with respect, though. Respect their position, respect their role, respect, their importance to the company. Um, Everybody here is here for a reason. Everybody's role is important, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be here. So, you know, from a respect perspective, it's a flat organization. I deserve as much respect as the people that are on customer service or in the warehouse, or it doesn't matter. The level of respect for everybody needs to be the same. And so to me, that's really what it comes down to. Does everybody respect everybody on a personal and work level? Now, like I said, we all have different hobbies, likes, personalities, but from a respect perspective, if you can't, you know, respect another person and their opinion and their point of view, then you're probably not going to fit here, because we have a pretty good culture.
I like it. Now, do you have a central office that a bunch of people come into, or are they
Yeah.
all working remote?
No, we're the majority of the people here are here every day. I mean, because we have manufacturing here, so obviously that has to be here every day,
Okay.
and the warehouse is here, has to be here every day. But customer service, marketing, finance, sales is here pretty much every day. We have a few people that are hybrid, but the
Yeah.
majority here every day.
So tell me what you've seen around that work-life balance, because we've seen a lot of companies struggle with
Yeah,
getting those employees to want to come in, right? That
yeah,
it if you start it that way from the culture, okay, that's always been part of that company. But somebody comes in from the outside where they were working from home all the time, they did some great work, and now they've got to be accountable to being in that office every day. Again, we come back to that word accountability.
yeah.
Um, Talk to me about what that's done now, because it's kind of reversed. Now it's more the exception to bring everybody into the office than it was before. So talk to me about what that's been like.
For sure. Um, you know, I think there's some roles that can work in a hybrid situation. Um, and so we allow that. I mean,
Hmm.
but I also think in my belief, and just from my career, and has been so much happens in the office on a day-to-day basis. When when I walk down the hall and to talk to the sales guys about, hey, I got a new product idea, or marketing, hey, I got this
Yep.
idea, or the sales guy comes in, hey, I got an idea. Like, so much happens in that day-to-day just interaction with people that I can't pick up this call and go, hey, get on a Zoom real quick, I got an idea.
Yeah.
I just think you lose that. I also think I don't think you can build a personal relationship over Zoom over time. I know I definitely have a better relationship with people that, because I'm here every day and I can talk to them, and you can have that quick, hey, how'd your kid do at his baseball game last night? What's going
Yep.
on? I heard how's the new puppy? Whatever it may be. You just can't have that, if you're not in the office. So I think you lose connection. And I think you lose a little bit of that, hey, I just got this great idea. Let me bounce it off you. And it may be a great idea or maybe a terrible idea, but you can sort of figure out quickly, is it or not? And then somebody overhears that and goes, hey, you know what? I was thinking about that too. Have you thought about this? You don't get as much of that organic sort of spur of the moment stuff that kind of is, to me, the difference of like being good or really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we talked about culture. I think that just feeding off each other's energy, right? You
Yeah.
being present and being able to provide some of that energy, your leadership team being present and providing the energy, right?
And if you're having a crappy day, and we all have crappy days, like, I can just go walk in somebody's office and go, dude, I'm just having a terrible day. Like, it's like, give me some good news. Tell me something good that's going on. They can lift your spirits, or you can see somebody that's down and go, hey, what's going on? Like, a lot of times you walk by somebody, you can kind of see they're down and go, hey, what's going on? Like, what happened? Can I help you? And then they kind of go, hey, this just happened, or something's going on in my life, or whatever, that you can help pull that person out of a bad spot, or find out something that's kind of maybe not right in your company that you need to fix. And
Yeah.
that's not going to happen if somebody's just sitting home all day working by themselves. So
Yeah.
um, I'm a believer in, at least the majority of the time, trying to be in the office and interacting with people.
No,
And
I
we
like
have
that.
people that drive like, an hour plus to come here. So, I mean, we must be somewhat decent to work here.
No, that's great. So that's a good segue into some of those bad days.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about some of those lessons that you had over the years. Some of those days that didn't go as planned. We did say this is Legacy Unscripted, right? Let's talk about the
Yes.
unscripted part of this. For those days that didn't go as planned, what were a couple of those big lessons that you learned and had to fight your way through, and what did you do to get through them? And that could
I
be across
mean,
any position. It doesn't have to be the,
for
the
sure. It's happened everywhere. It happens, and it still happens all the time. I mean, you get that, whatever, you think everything's going great, and you just get some email or some phone call, and you just get that pit in your stomach, like,
yeah,
oh my God, did that really just happen? Um, and I think the best way to do it is attack it head on. Call your boss, tell them what happened, or your partner, or your investors, or whoever it is, and go, hey, just FYI, here's what's going on. And sometimes it's like, here's what's going on. I have no idea what the solution is. I just want to let you know I'm working on it. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. Or, hey, this is what's going on. I have no idea what to do. Can you help me? I just think, that reaching out and saying how, here's what happened. Here's how it happened. Sometimes it's just totally out of control, just out of the blue.
yep,
Who knew, right? Or you screwed something up and you missed a step in the process, and it's like, hey, here's what happened. Here's how we're fixing it. Or do you have a suggestion? I just think really it's that it's not, you've heard it a million times. It's not like a fine wine. It doesn't get better with age. So
yeah,
the worse the news, the quicker you should let whoever you need to know.
yeah,
And then everybody jumps in and fixes it. And like I tell everybody, we're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And as long as I make more good decisions than bad decisions a year, we're going to do good. But just try not make the same bad decision twice. Learn from it.
Yeah.
Learn if it was a process thing we screwed up. Was it, whatever it is, there's probably something along the way that you fixed or you could fix. And I think everybody says it, and it's true, is like, failure is what makes you better. When things are going great, half the time you don't even know where they're going great. They're just going great in spite of yourself. But when you make that mistake is when you really learn. And if you engage the other people and bring the other people in, I think you also build a stronger bond and a stronger trust, because they know, look, if he makes a mistake, he's going to let me know. He's going to own his mistake, and we're going to move forward. So at the end of the day, like, if you screw up with a customer, I tell our team here, you screw up with a customer, then you call them up and you go, I'm super sorry for, we shipped you 20% of the belts you wanted, or we shipped the wrong ones. We're super sorry. Let us fix it. Here's what we're going to do. They may be a little upset or whatever, but they also know at the end of the day, they're going to trust you, because they know if you make a mistake and there's a problem, you're going to fix it. So it's an opportunity to don't screw up on purpose, but if you do, it's the opportunity to learn and build more trust and strength, whether it be a teammate or a customer.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I have a book. I'll try to get the link to it in the show notes, but I've got a book that I had from a individual who's a PR consultant out of Canada. And he said this in his book, and I've used it for years now, but it's so succinct and so simple, but it works in almost every one of these situations. And he says, you got to let them know what you know. Right?
Yeah.
Start with, first of all, what do I know? Second of all, what do I not know? And third, when can I come back for more information?
Yeah, it's perfect.
And it's so simple if we always communicated with that, right? Because as you said, you don't want to let these things age like fine wine, right? Let's get out in front of this and let's tell people what's going on, even if we're still trying to figure out the impact, right? Yeah. Let's get out there and say, this is what we know. Here's what we know happened. And here's what we think may be the case, but we don't know that yet. So here's what we're doing to find out. We don't know this. We don't know this. Don't know this. And here's what we're going to do to find out. And you can come back for more information next week, end of this week, first part of Monday. We'll have a meeting next week. We'll send out a note. Whatever you're going to do to keep them informed, let them know that. That way you don't get at the end of the week and people constantly checking back in. Hey, did you find out yet? Hey, did you figure out that yet? No. Here's when you can come back for more information.
Yeah.
That helps everybody across the board. And it's so simple to remember to do that. If all of us would communicate that simply, I think many of these situations would be far less impactful than what they are right now.
Yeah. And I think, human nature is you don't want to have that hard conversation, right? But again, it's in the back of your mind and it's all you think about until you have it. So you might as well have it just to get it out there, because you're going to have it at some point. So get it out there so it just doesn't sit there and nag at you.
Yep. And take a few seconds so that you can get your head around it and maybe deal with it emotionally, so you're not an emotional wreck depending on what happened.
Yeah, you may need a day or so to figure stuff out, to come with an intelligent, conversation, but don't sit on it and try to fix it on your own.
Yep. So that's how we deal with the tough times. You want to share any examples?
Oh man, how many do you want me to tell you, right?
Let's start with one. We'll go from there.
One time we did I was at Callaway and we did a limited edition bag to commemorate the Masters coming up, and they're pretty particular about their brand, and we had somewhat of a relationship with them. I had thought that we had gotten it cleared by them, and it turns out we didn't. And it was a $250,000 mistake, because we had to scrap the product, and I had to go tell the CEO I made a $250,000 mistake.
Ouch.
So you can imagine how much fun that was. But again, there was a few, I just had to own it. at the end of the day, I was responsible for it. It wasn't my job to go get that done. I assumed it was done, but I'm, trust me, I never made that mistake again. And again, it was a flaw in our process, and we learned from that. But that might have been one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have.
That's a tough one. Yeah, you
It's
start talking
not.
about.
It's not a great conversation to have. It's like, well, so what are we going to do with it? Well, we got to scrap it.
Wow. And there was no
So
salvaging it at all at that point.
no, no,
Okay.
yep, because you couldn't sell it. So
So
that
tell me
was
how that
painful.
worked with the relationship then with the masters. Did that threaten the relationship at all? Were
No,
you
because we
upfront
did.
with
Because
them?
as soon as they said, "Hey," our CEO is the one who had the relationship with them. It wasn't really a
Yeah.
company relationship. But no, because when they said, "Hey, this wasn't approved," and we said, "Okay, our bad. We're
Yeah.
gonna get rid of it," and then for the years we got all the stuff approved and it was great, no problem. So again, it definitely didn't hurt it because they said, "Okay," when you said scrap it, we scrapped it.
Yep. And I mean, to the theme of the day, I guess it's accountability, right? It
Mm-hmm.
comes back to, I stepped up, took ownership, and had the tough
Yeah.
conversation, and there it went.
Still makes me uncomfortable talking about it. Now is
Oh, I
10
bet.
years ago.
Okay. That is a good lesson to learn, and a good one to
Yes.
learn. And I'm assuming that's one that you've passed along through the years as well.
Yes.
It's the old adage of measuring twice and cutting once. I mean, it's let's double check the brand a few times before we go kicking out a
Correct.
$250,000 run of these bags.
Yes, correct.
Gotcha. Yeah, I had there was a small electric company I was working for when I was young. I was doing an internship for it, and they'd been in business, I forget, like 20 years, something like that. And the controller was one of the gentlemen who had started the company once upon a time. Well, he was going out on medical leave. He was having a knee done, and he went out on medical leave. And so I was brought in as an intern, being an accounting guy that I was at the time. And they gave me a week and a half worth of training to learn what this guy had been doing for 20 years.
Oh, God.
That's never a good thing.
No.
And sure enough, the first payroll run, no, it was the first payables run. Back then still doing, the 10th and 25th, as many companies would do. I ran the payables on the 10th, and there's one little checkbox that either I checked it or I wasn't supposed to check it. I don't remember which. My guess is I probably was supposed to uncheck it, and I didn't. And all the payables ran for the entire month. Um,
Oops.
yeah, $750,000 worth of payables on a company that only had a $500,000 credit line.
Oh, my
So that
gosh.
was fortunately this was 30 years ago when
Yeah.
people had to stuff envelopes, right?
Right.
and
Oh,
and
so
the
they
poor
caught it.
yeah, so the
Yeah,
poor
today it'd be
ladies
a
that were
problem.
stuffing envelopes, they thought this is an awful lot of checks. We don't normally send out this many. And today those things would have been wired over, and we'd have to pay re, refunding issues, or have to find some
Yeah.
way to fund it or something. But to your point, that was not a fun conversation to be
No.
having.
No.
Those lessons stick with you. I mean,
Yes.
like I said, what is that? 30 years later, and I still get a little bit sweaty. It does. Those lessons stick with you, but those are the best ones to have, because
For
those are the
sure.
ones that certainly get passed down to the next generation, or the next individuals.
For
Um,
sure.
Good. Now you've been down the entrepreneurial route
Mhm.
a couple times,
Yep.
either as yourself or with other entrepreneurs and
Yep.
on the executive teams. What do you see in, if you were to give advice to somebody either in the sports space, or it doesn't even have to be in sports or apparel or anything, just in general, what does that advice look like from you?
Um, First, ask questions. Um, especially if you're young and you're coming into a business. If you're just starting your career or you're coming into a entrepreneurial situation, clearly the leadership has got either some experience in that industry or experience starting businesses. So,
Right.
whatever project you're working on, there's a 95% chance they've already done it before. So when you get stuck, go ask questions because they've done it, and save yourself a week's worth of trying to figure it out to go do it,
Yep.
and have a 30-minute conversation, and they'll guide you along the way. I tell my son, who's a senior at USC, I'm like, look, I've done 1,000 presentations in my life, and 0% of them have I not taken it to the person, my boss or whoever, for feedback all along the whole process. Like when I start, okay, is this what we're looking for? And then get started. Okay, am I on the right path? And then even when I'm done, hey, here's my final thing. What's your feedback? And almost every single time I get feedback along the way, because you don't want to go all the way down to the end. And this is a presentation or project, whatever you're doing, get all the way down to the end and they go, that's not what I was thinking about. So ask questions, because look, myself, like I want to help the people here that don't have the experience, pass my experience on, let them learn what I learned. I had people who did that for me, and it's my turn to do that for them. But also I think it builds trust. I always worry about the person who says, I got it, we're good, how's everything going? It's great. Yeah, we're fine. No chance. 0% chance, because there's not a single person here who can go a week and everything be fine. No chance ever. But when that person comes to you with the problem, or, hey, I'm working on this, I have a question, and you're helping them with what you've now been invested in whatever project they're doing, because now not only are they doing it, but you sort of de facto said, I'm part of this project as well. So they've bought in. And so I also then build trust, because I know if that person has a question or they have a problem, they're going to come to me with it. So if I ask them, how's everything going? And they say, fine, chances are it's probably fine.
Yep.
Because if it's not, they're going to say, hey, I got this issue, or I got a question. And I know it's the hardest thing and I don't understand why, but the hardest thing for people to do is go ask questions. And I do it to, our private equity guys. I talk to them on the phone. I mean, almost every day, and more days than not, multiple times, whether they're asking me stuff or I'm asking them stuff. But when we're working on stuff, like, I bounce stuff off them all the time. I mean, they've done, I don't know how many companies, right? This is my first time as a CEO, so I'm sure they can help me a lot. And I don't feel stupid asking them. I've learned a lot in the 2 years I've been here. I'm better than I was 2 years ago, but a lot of that is just because I just ask. And I don't feel like I have to know it all. I feel like I need to figure it out. I feel the pressure that I have to figure it out, but I don't feel like I have to know it. And so I think that's an important distinction of, like, for your role. Like, your role is you need to figure out how to do it. You need to do it.
Right.
But figure it out, not know it. Like, go ask. There's a million ways now to learn, whether it be YouTube or master classes or your boss or whoever. So yeah, probably rule number 1 through 10, ask questions.
Ask questions. And when you get to number 11, see question 10, or see rule number 10.
Exactly.
So a couple questions come out of that. Speaking of questions, a couple of them come out of that. So you mentioned the PE, right? This is a road I haven't had a chance to explore a ton in the podcast, so I'm curious to get your take on it.
Sure.
Working with a private equity firm, what's that like for you? What made that different? I mean, you've worked with boards of directors before and that kind of stuff. How does it change when those individuals are actually helping to fund the work that you're doing?
Well, now as opposed to, your department or whatever being a percentage of the revenue, I'm responsible for 100% of the revenue. And, putting the budget together and the revenue plan and the, profit, all that, putting it together and then owning that. So, on a monthly basis. So there is a heightened sense of, pressure is probably the right word. But you do have to own 100% of it, for good, better or worse. You own it. And there is no backstop. There is no, well, the other side's doing really good, so they can cover us this month, or we're doing really good and we can cover for them. It's like, we own it.
Now, one thing I've seen quite a bit when I've seen people working with PE or VCs. There's this um, there's this vision from those that are providing the funds
Mhm.
from those PE individuals to kind of push it along further, right? Maybe you were going to open 2 stores over the next 3 years, and they say, no, you know what? I can see you open 5 stores in the next 2 years, right? To
Yep.
keep it pushing along faster. Have you seen that in your experience? Have you seen that what might have been a nice pace has now been pushed a little bit because they see things in the company that maybe you didn't see yourselves?
Uh, yes and no, but I also think that's good.
Okay.
So, why I say yes and no is our private equity guys are great. They're partners. They stretch it, but they, they have an investor too. So we have to put a realistic number out there because they don't want to stretch what we say we're going to do too much, because we also pass that on to the investors and
Makes sense.
into the fund, and so they don't want to go, well, you said you're going to do this, but you missed, right? So there's this really fine line of how far can you push it, and you know, every this is the end of the day. Everybody's answering to somebody. I don't know
Yeah.
where the chain ends. I haven't seen where that chain ends, but it always feels like there's somebody above somebody else, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing, I actually think that's good too, because if you set, I think you and I might have had a little bit of this conversation before, is if you set your goal to where you're going to hit it, you
Yeah.
didn't get to where you want. Like I I feel like, as much as I hate it, I want to be on the razor's edge sort of every month of like, did we, are we going to get there? Are we going to hit our revenue? Are we going to hit our profit? Like, because that way I know if we're on the razor's edge, we're pushing as hard as we can push to get there. Versus, oh, we got this made, we can cruise it. We probably didn't get it all. So I don't know, maybe it's from my, competitive nature. Like I don't I actually don't mind being on that razor's edge every month, because then I know we're we're trying to eke it out as much as we can.
Yeah, I think this is something, and that may be where you and I talked about it a little bit. I think this is something that we get from elite athletes or high level athletes that have now come into that entrepreneurial role. Is they take that competitiveness, that need for preparation, that need to push themselves a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and they bring that into the business world. They start to push the
Yeah.
business the same way.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about it. I mean, I like to see my clients push their goals to the point of where they're uncomfortable with them, right? You
Yeah.
don't think outside of your current bounds unless you're uncomfortable, right? I want people to say, yeah, maybe we can get there, but I have no idea how we're going to get there. Perfect, right? I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. I mean, our board asked, last year we didn't hit the budget we set. We still had a, relative to market, an extremely good year. And we set another really aggressive, and we probably made some mistakes last year, to
Hmm.
to be fair. We probably were a little overly optimistic in some spots, but we're not far, removed from our growth plan of percentage from last year to this year. And they asked the question, like, is this a stretch? Is this, are you overly optimistic? I said, we're not overly optimistic. I think we're we're pretty realistic, but we're going to have to work hard to get here. And I think that's a really good spot to be, is that you're going to have to work really hard if you're trying to maximize your growth. We're going to have to work really hard to get there. I think we can do it, and we need more things to go right than wrong, but that's okay. Like, I want to see how far
Yep.
we can get.
No, I like it. So before I wrap up, because I know we're
Yeah.
getting on some heavy time here, before we wrap up, I want to give you the chance. Give me your elevator pitch for NextBelt.
It's the best belt you're ever going to wear. And I'll tell you why. So if you wear a traditional belt, it's got holes every inch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have your favorite belt, and it fits perfect on a pair of jeans, right? Right? Fits in that hole perfect. It's not hanging too loose. It's not too tight, right? Jeans are kind of a thicker material. Now you go put on a pair of shorts because you're in Vegas and it's the summertime and it's 1 billion degrees. So you got a thin pair of
Yep.
shorts. Now you put that same belt on and it's like a little bit loose, right? So you either got to have it loose and kind of buggy because it's loose, or you got to ratchet it down one more and it's too tight.
Yeah.
So with NextBelt, it's got a ratchet system. So you have 4 to 5 adjustments every inch. So I don't care what you're wearing, whether it's jeans or shorts, you put on 5 pounds, you took off 5 pounds, you put on 10 pounds, whatever, it's going to fit you perfect every single time. And then what's going to happen is you're going to wear a next belt, and then you're going to put your other belt on, and you're going to be like, this doesn't fit great. You're going to notice how the regular belt doesn't fit great. And the other thing is too, like, you know, with guys as you age, typically people put on weight so they can see like where that wear mark is, where the buckle was, right? So you can see like as they kept putting on pounds as they keep going. If you do it with ours, you're never going to see that. So you're going to put on 20 pounds, nobody's going to notice. First, like, dude, looks like you put on a few pounds there because that belt's not in the same loop. So
that's funny.
It's good for your ego too if you're putting on a couple.
That's good. Well, I think you've done that once or twice. Not the putting on the weight, but giving the
I hope not. I try hard. I keep running the mile so I don't. But if I do,
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. No, that sounds terrific. Well, we'll get the links. We'll get you to send over the links. We'll get those in the show notes so everybody can catch up on it and go out and find you. Gregg, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't just sit on it. Take action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with someone who may need to hear it. And if you've got a story to share, or you would just want to connect, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy.